Behind the sword, prophecies, and glorious victories, every chosen one has their demons. Look in their eyes and you'll see the imposter syndrome, the loss of childhood, the agonizing double life of having to pretend you know what you're doing. Being chosen might mean being special, but it can also mean being isolated. And for a truly dark few, the prophecy doesn't choose them to save the world, it chooses them to destroy it, cementing their loneliness forever. Today we're diving into the secret loneliness that sits at the heart of every chosen one story, and why prophecy might be the cruelest narrative device ever created. If isolation is the consequence of destiny, then imposter syndrome is the weapon that enforces it. The prophecy marks them, the mentors train them, but the chosen one is left with a single, toxic question: am I actually special? Or was I just convenient? The classic chosen one spends half their story wondering if they're actually special, or just ended up in their predicament by chance. They struggle with never knowing if they deserve their own legend. Harry Potter constantly questions whether he's truly the only one who can defeat Voldemort, or just someone who happened to survive by accident. Throughout the series, he wrestles with whether his victories come from genuine skill or pure luck, whether he deserves the reverence others show him, or whether he's simply riding on his mother's sacrifice and other people's expectations. This doubt becomes a defining characteristic, making him more relatable, but also more psychologically fragmented. Even the accidental hero who isn't specifically chosen by prophecy, but inadvertently finds themselves filling the role, face similar doubts about whether they are actually the right person for the job. For them, the transition feels more jarring and awkward as they try to reconcile their ordinary past with their extraordinary present. But cursed chosen ones, the ones destined to destroy the world rather than save it, face the inverse nightmare. They wake up each morning praying the prophecy lied. Every sunrise becomes a countdown to apocalypse, every moment of peace stolen before they become the monster everyone expects. This trope changes every relationship. Your friends become followers. Your family becomes either your greatest supporters or your greatest burden. No one can relate to you as an equal anymore, because external forces have marked you as fundamentally different. A modern variation of this trope is multiple chosen ones, which either solve this problem or make it infinitely worse. Shared burden can create the only truly pure relationship a chosen one might have, but it creates rivalry and competition to be the leader, amplifying the isolation through comparison and doubt. The Wheel of Time explores this dynamic through Rand and his friends. When the story begins, any one of them has the potential to be the prophesied dragon reborn. While they should be the only people who truly understand each other's experience, their different destinies and priorities create a hierarchy that fractures their friendship. For some characters, the pressure is too much. They crack under the weight of being special, of carrying everyone's hopes or fears. The tragedy isn't that they fail, but that the very act of being chosen set them up for psychological destruction. This connects to something everyone feels at one point or another: the fear of being exposed as a fraud, of not being able to live up to expectations. Every chosen one lives with the secret fear that they're not actually worthy of their role. Cursed chosen ones experience this differently, but just as intensely. Their loneliness stems from the fear of success rather than failure. They're isolated by the deeply rooted fear that they might actually be everything the prophecy says they are. Every moment of anger, selfish thought, or human weakness becomes potential evidence that they're destined for darkness. This creates a psychological cage where the chosen one can never fully trust their own emotions or motivations. Are they feeling genuine compassion? Or is this just what heroes are supposed to feel? Are they struggling with normal human darkness? Or is this the prophecy beginning to manifest? The prophecy strips away the luxury of authentic self-discovery. Instead of figuring out who you are through experience and choice, your identity becomes predetermined by external forces that care nothing for you individually. Destiny burdens chosen ones with cosmic responsibility while robbing them of their right to grow up naturally. The moment prophecy marks you, whether for salvation or destruction, your childhood is effectively over. Normal development follows a predictable pattern. Adolescents are supposed to be selfish sometimes, make terrible mistakes, experiment with different versions of themselves, and gradually figure out who they want to become. Chosen ones don't get that luxury. They're thrust into adult responsibilities while their brains are still developing, forced to carry the weight of everyone's future before they've even figured out their own identity. This creates characters who are wise beyond their years, but emotionally stunted in crucial ways. They can strategize against ancient evils or navigate complex political situations, but they might never learn how to have a normal conversation with someone their own age. Heroes burdened with saving everyone develop a savior complex that prevents them from ever putting themselves first. They learn to see their own needs as selfish, their own desires as secondary to a greater purpose. Peter Parker consistently sacrifices his personal relationships, his education, his career prospects, and his own happiness, because he's internalized the belief that his needs don't matter compared to his responsibility to save others as Spider-Man. He can't enjoy a date, or even grieve properly because every moment of self-focus feels like a betrayal of his duty. This creates a character who's perpetually exhausted and unable to build the connections that he could lean on for support. Meanwhile, cursed ones burdened with destroying everyone develop the opposite problem. They become so terrified of their own wants and needs that they never learn to trust their own judgment. What makes this particularly tragic is how it creates characters who are simultaneously too old and too young for their circumstances. They have the wisdom to understand cosmic stakes but lack the emotional tools to process the personal cost. They can save the world but can't figure out how to maintain a friendship. The chosen one's relationship with authority becomes fundamentally warped. They're often more powerful or important than the adults around them, but they're still children who need guidance and support. This creates an unusual dynamic where they're simultaneously dependent and independent, leaders and followers, children and adults. Clark Griffin in the 100 makes life and death decisions for entire communities, leads military strategies, and bears responsibility for many lives. Yet, she's still a teenager who struggles with basic emotional regulation. She has the authority to decide who lives and dies, but lacks the emotional maturity to process the weight of those choices. This creates a character who's simultaneously the most powerful person in her world, and the most psychologically vulnerable. Modern stories are beginning to recognize this psychological damage, and explore characters who actively resist the forced maturity that comes with destiny. They're showing chosen ones who insist on maintaining aspects of their childhood, who refuse to let prophecy completely define their development. Chosen ones lose their childhoods to forced maturity and responsibility, but they also lose the chance to discover who they might have been without the weight of destiny shaping every moment of their development. Whether they're destined to save or damn the world, they're robbed of the fundamental human experience of growing up at their own pace and choosing their own identity. Modern variations of this trope have evolved into something far more psychologically complex than their predecessors. Instead of celebrating power, they've begun exploring how being chosen can make you afraid of your own potential. Contemporary narratives frame the chosen one's abilities, not as gifts, but as barely contained disasters waiting to happen. They become a danger to everyone they care about. This creates the ultimate form of isolation, being too dangerous to get close to others. Imagine living every day knowing that a moment of lost control, a surge of strong emotion, or even just falling asleep, could unleash devastation on innocent people. Your very existence becomes a threat to the people you're supposed to protect. Cursed chosen ones represent the clearest example of this dynamic. They carry the weight of dark destiny while also being walking weapons that could activate at any moment. Every relationship becomes a risk assessment. Every emotional connection becomes a potential casualty. They learn to see love itself as a liability because caring about someone gives their curse more power to hurt them. Kylo Ren's emotional turmoil directly fuels his dark power, making every moment of anger or grief a potential weapon. When he's focused purely on his role as a first-order weapon, he maintains some semblance of control, but becomes a walking catastrophe when faced with confusion about his identity. Many contemporary heroes face this same psychological burden. The chosen one destined to save the world might have power that's inherently corrupting or unpredictable. They withdraw not because they're evil, but because they're terrified of what they might accidentally do to the people they love. In The Wheel of Time, Rand al'Thor's growing power comes with an increasingly unstable connection to the One Power and the taint of madness that drove previous male channelers insane. Every time he embraces his abilities, he risks losing more of his sanity and humanity. He becomes paranoid, ruthless, and emotionally distant. He pushes away his closest friends and the woman he loves, not out of cruelty, but out of fear for their safety. Both types of chosen ones, heroic and cursed, end up making the same devastating choice to withdraw to protect others from themselves. The hero fears their power will corrupt them or harm innocence. The cursed one fears their destiny will be fulfilled. This transforms love into a weapon against the chosen one. The more they care about someone, the more dangerous that relationship becomes. Their emotional connections become vulnerabilities that either their power or their curse can exploit. So they learn to love from a distance, to care without connecting, to protect by abandoning. Other modern stories emphasize choice over destiny, exploring characters who actively fight against this isolation, who refuse to let fear of their potential drive them away from human connection. But the psychological cost is always present. Even when they choose to stay connected, they're constantly monitoring themselves, constantly afraid that this will be the moment their power betrays everyone they care about. The time bomb metaphor is perfect because it captures the constant anxiety these characters live with. In addition to external threats, they must also now consider the threat within themselves. They've become the danger they need to protect others from, and that knowledge rewrites their entire relationship with their own identity and emotions. These psychological burdens create the secret loneliness that sits at the heart of every Chosen One story. Whether marked for salvation or destruction, these characters face the same isolation, the weight of extraordinary expectation, and the loss of authentic relationships. Which Chosen One stories have best captured this psychological isolation for you? Drop a comment about characters who made you feel the weight of destiny's loneliness, whether they were marked for light or darkness.